This is Pam Immekus. I'm currently the ASHRAE chapter historian, Region 4, and I'm interviewing Dan McNeil, who is a long-standing member and my predecessor as historian. And how many years were you historian?
20 years.
I don't plan to do it that long. A little bit about Dan. Well, maybe I should ask you a little bit about Dan, shouldn't I?
Yes.
Okay, you tell me. You tell me.
Well, I was thinking, I've interviewed quite a few people, and I always wanted them to tell us something about their history and all. And I was born in Mississippi, raised in Hattiesburg, and I always wanted to go get an engineering degree. And I couldn't decide whether I wanted to go to Georgia Tech or Caltech or MIT. They were the three good engineering schools. So I graduated high school in '42, and then I came to Georgia Tech.
I don't remember 42.
Well, I got that in September '42, and the World War II was going on. So they said everybody in college ought to join the ASTP, the Army Specialized Training Program, which I did do. Everybody did it. And we came back after Christmas of '42, first of '43, and they said, we're calling up everybody in the ASTP and put them in the Army.
Oh, no.
And I quit school for 2 or 3 days. The only thing, I was still 17. I wasn't 18 yet, so they didn't call me up. So I finally was 18 in February, and they said, we're going to let you finish your freshman year, and then you'd be called up. So that's what happened. So I finished my freshman year at Georgia Tech, and they called me up, and I went to Fort Benning at the infantry school for basic training. That was one of the hardest ones that I've ever spent. It was just awful. They really put us through it and all. And after we finished basic training, they said, well, we're all going to send you back to school, but we're going to send you to West Virginia University in Morgantown. And that's where my son and daughter-in-law are now at West Virginia University, professors up there. But that only lasted about 3 months. The Army was always putting people in new things. The war was going on there in '43. And so finally, I wound up in New Orleans in OCS, in the Transportation Corps. And I was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Transportation Corps, and I was still only 19 years old. I couldn't even get a drink, you had to be 21 to get a drink.
But you could go to war.
Yeah. So they sent me to San Francisco, and I guess I was the best dude in the world because we looked at all the ships that they were converted into troop transports and everything. But I told them I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go overseas. Then I started traveling on merchant ships. I was a security officer. And I went to Calcutta, India, went to Australia, went to the Philippines, had some real good experience. I really did. And it was for a 20-year-old second lieutenant roaming around out there. But one of the most interesting things, I went to Calcutta one time, and my orders were to come back to to San Pedro, California, where I shipped out of with first available transportation. So I got on a plane in Calcutta, went to Karachi, and then to Casablanca. And that's where I said, I wanted to see the Casbah then, so we were in the bachelor officer's quarters there. Lieutenant McNeil, report to the duty officer. Went there. They said, you are a courier officer. They strapped a briefcase on my arm, put a .45 around my waist, and I started traveling on Monday night. I finally wound up in Washington, D.C. Friday morning, riding continuously. And everywhere I'd go, they'd put me on the first available plane getting out.
They ever take that wristband off?
Well, I had the funny thing, I got the .45 I still kept, and I just gave it to my son about a year ago. I wasn't going to give it back to him. But I got into Washington, and I still remember that sergeant. They took it off of me, and I said, Sergeant, I'd like to get a plane and out to the West Coast. Lieutenant, generals have planes. You're going on a train. So I said, well, that's fine with me, but I'm from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, so can I go that way? He said, yeah, we'll rail route you that way. So I got riding through Hattiesburg.
Oh, how
Got
nice.
to visit folks for a while down there.
How long did it take you to get out to California? It must have taken a week
Oh,
on a train?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't gonna tell you, but then when I got out, I went to Camp Stoneman then.
And where's
At
that?
the end of that's right out of San Francisco. And everybody was getting out of the Army then. I mean, well, in fact, one of the interesting things, when I went to the Philippines, we were going into Manila, but they just eliminated, just gotten the Japanese out of that, so we went up to Subic Bay and unloaded up there. So I came back on a ship, a Navy ship, I think the name was General John Pope. And they had the prisoners from the Santa Tomas prison, the prison there in the Philippines, the Japanese had put into it, and they were shipping them back to the States. So another lieutenant and I were assigned to the War Crimes Commission to take their depositions of that, which was kind of interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
it was still a 20-year-old lieutenant. I mean,
I'd
but
have
it
to
was good.
listen to horror
Yes,
stories.
right.
Yeah.
But it was good experience. You know. So fine. Oh, and I was going to say, so as a transportation corps, they assigned me as a train commander. They were bringing everybody back from the overseas. And from the West Coast, they were sending them to Camp Shelby, Mississippi, which is in Hattiesburg. And since I was there, to get out of the Army, I had to take a troop train from out there to Camp Shelby, Mississippi, then catch a train back out to the West Coast, and then a train back to Camp Shelby. So I went across the country 3 times.
Just to get decommissioned?
To get decommissioned.
Wow.
And the other interesting thing was, on the train, we had the food was cooked and everything on the train, and had all the kitchen utensils and everything like that. When we got to Camp Shelby, I can't remember what we were missing. We were missing a knife or fork or something out of the kitchen. And they said, Lieutenant McNeil, if we put this as lost, they'll make you stay in the Army until they can find it. If you want to just give me, I can't remember, $5 or $10, we can just write it off. And I said, well, let's do that. So I had to pay to get out of the Army.
For a fork.
Yeah, for a fork, yeah. And then, so I came back to Tech. I'd had the year there, and I went under Public Law 16 back to school, and they had to give you an aptitude test then to do that. I took it when they called me in. They said, Dan McNeil, if you hadn't gone to Tech for a year and had pretty good grades, we wouldn't let you come here because your interest is not as an engineer. You're something else. You have nothing. And that's just true, I guess, of my experience. Even though I'm a registered engineer, it's been selling all the time. So I think but they did let me go to Tech, and
That was nice of them.
finished there. And in those days, they had a pretty good, don't remember what they called it, but companies would come and interview the graduates. I don't remember.
Like a job fair, like
Yeah, job fair thing, but yeah, that. And American Blower was one of the people, Bill McKinney Sr. was the one that came to Tech to interview us. And I didn't know who American Blower was. We took one heating and air conditioning course, and they did have, I think Buffalo Forge was mentioned in an American Blower, so there were some people who kind of knew what it was. And I had a friend that Dad was in the business, and said American Blower is a good company, so I went with them. And it was funny, I finished in March of '49, and they had a 6-month training program. So I went to Detroit, was where the factory was, in March, and they put me in R&D until June, when the regular students would come in. So they got us, we were all looking for extra money, so that they were converted to natural gas in Detroit. So someone got us a job of going out and selling gas burners, to convert furnaces. Tell the story, I was real smart in those days, I'm sure, that we had to make a he lost calculation on the thing, and it was, pretty simple and everything. But anyway, I went to one place, and I said, well, you need one for 50 or 60,000 BTU per hour. And they said, well, the other fellow said we need one for 95,000. Well, that was coal BTUs. I'm talking about gas BTUs. So they gave me my different BTUs. Yeah, this thing place.
That's great. Now,
So-
when did you meet Dolly?
Well, in Catherine Pritchett was a real good girlfriend of mine when I was at Tech. I was a KA, and she was one of the girls, that came to K house all the time. And so she used to get me blind dates. I was I liked to play the field, I guess, in those days. And I think it was in December of '48 when she got a blind date with Dolly and I. And we started dating pretty heavily then, and we were engaged before I left in March of '49. So
Oh,
we were
that's
engaged
great,
about
yeah.
3 months. And I came back to Atlanta at the end of the training program, and we were married in November, Thanksgiving Day of '49. And then we moved to Dallas. And we were in Dallas only for about 8 or 9 months. And I don't know whether y'all know Jerry Hines. You know who the Hines interests are? You heard of them? Jerry Hines was with American Blower, and in Houston. He left American Blower and went with, I think it was called Texas Engineering. I think they had the Claridge fans or something. So I replaced Jerry Hines in Houston. But when we were in Dallas, they were from Purdue. He and the contractor out, they were both Purdue boys. And I guess it was because we all were about the same age. We got together at parties and everything. Jerry said he was going to marry a rich Texas girl and be a millionaire, and he did. He married Sakowitz's daughter, who was a big independent department store.
Okay.
So I went to Houston then. We stayed in Houston for about 5 years. I got real active with ASHRAE there. There were 2 or 3 guys that kind of took us under their wings. And at Texas A&M, the guy's name was Dr. Giesecke, I think, if I remember correctly, that had done a whole lot of work with hot water, one of his first hot water, because, before that it was all steam, and he had done quite a bit of work on hot water. So we went down there and started a student chapter and all that kind of stuff. And so I was
Now, was it ASHRAE then, or
It was
it?
ASHRAE.
It was ASHRAE
Well, no,
then?
SHB.
AXB.
HB.
Okay.
And I tell the story, I used to tell it over the years. Engineer by the name of Ray Taylor got to be president, I guess, like in 53, 52 or 53 at the society level. He lost his business. I mean, he was so much to do. I mean, his business went by the wayside when he was president of ASHRAE.
Mm-hmm.
But we were pretty active we went to Texas A&M quite often to do that chapter thing. So I did that, and then Dolly, we had 2 girls, both born in Houston. And Dolly kind of wanted to come back to Atlanta. We were both only children, so Atlanta was kind of where both of our parents were. My mother and dad had moved here in '50. He was with Southern Bell, so I really considered Atlanta home too. So Bill McKinney needed someone here, so we were transferred in '55 back to Atlanta. And what we did in Atlanta was one of the company by John J. Nesbitt. I don't know whether you all know, they made unit ventilators at that time. And the American Blower was a nationwide distributor for a Nesbitt unit ventilator.
Okay.
So they assigned me the duty to promote what we call then is controlled ventilation. This was before air conditioning, and the story was, with a classroom with 30 little kids in it, it's like a hot box there, so you need ventilation. If you don't really need heating, you need ventilation. So that's what we did. We sold unit ventilator that has controlled ventilation. Honeywell was real active in the promotion of ventilation, unit ventilators too, because of the controls associated with it. And Jimmy Hodge was one of the members here that, and we did a whole lot of demonstration of taking unit ventilators around and talking to school boards and things like that. So it was a real good experience after 2 or 3 years that we did that. And I'm trying to think of the president of ASHRAE at the society level that was with Honeywell. I can't remember his name offhand now, but he was real active because he was one of the head people at Honeywell doing controlled ventilation at that time. And I got, fairly well active with ASHRAE then, but there was an elderly man that was in Tampa, Florida, that was with American Blower. I wanted to tell you, other thing was that in those days, there were fan companies, and they were American Blower, Buffalo, and Sturtevant were the 3 big fan companies. Then Cary and York were the refrigeration people, air conditioning, and then Train was just getting started on. And I still remember when I was in Dallas, really, I worked pretty closely with the York people because they were selling machines and everything. We used to sell coils and fans. We had built up systems. You select all the V-belt drives and motors and everything. We had to do all the engineering on the fan and heat transfer side. But I also like to tell the story that the York people had some cold storage booklets that they took about 3 or 4 pages to make a calculation of what heat losses were, what products you were going to put in there, what temperature you had to sell. So you went through all this thing to 2 or 3 decimal places. And then the last page, it said, how many times are you going to open the door during the day? And you'd either double what you think or a triplet, so all of those calculations with the 3rd and 4th decimal place, and then you
all
go
went out the door.
That's right. Well, I always thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, as I was saying, the American Blower man in Tampa, I think he retired. He was an elderly guy. So Bill McKinney said, "Do you want to go down and man that office?" I think the guy out there was a manufacturing agent. He wasn't an employee of American Blower. So yes, I said that would be a good idea. So I went to Tampa and opened the office down there. It was interesting. That was before I left Atlanta. American Blower came out with the ton rack, which was a centrifugal machine. I sold the first one to Dennis Hayes at the Macon Auditorium down there. I still remember that. And Dennis was so funny too, that he had so many things that I can't remember the exact figures, but it was on the downtown electrical network in Macon. And you can only have so much inrush current at that time. So he had a requirement that the inrush current couldn't be 1 or 2 times what the running current were. I don't remember all the figures. So we had to do what is called a carbon pile starter. I remember that starter cost like $8,000, and that was a lot of money back in those days, because I don't think the ton rack cost all that. And we went down there to start it up, and it was an Alan Bradley. I don't remember his name now, but so he was down there and started up. The first thing we did, it just had an inrush current, and we blew the whole electrical thing down and right there, all the lights were out. And with carbon, they were called carbon piles, and it's how much pressure you put on piles, I guess, to make them denser to reduce the inrush current. So it was really tricky to adjust that thing. But we finally
It was
got it
obviously not adjusted.
No. And what I was telling you that, so when I went to Tampa, one of the first problems I had down there was that again, I can't remember the name of the company, it was a Savings and Loan Association in St. Petersburg. And one of the directors of that was a big owner of American Standard stock. American Blower was owned by American Standard. He was a big, and they had one of the ton racks there. And the ton rack problem was that they were oversized. And on reduced loading, they would have this awful squealing, ooh, just really bad. I mean, it was too much. You had I'm not that good a centrifugal man, but the centrifugal loops were too big, and they were just terrible. So the owner, the guy that was a big American Standard stockholder, he wanted something done, so we finally had someone come down. But I got a good experience, and they sent someone down from New York, from American Standard corporate headquarters, big shot, and he was just a goodwill ambassador, I guess is what you would call it. And so we had to go see this American Standard millionaire that had all the stock. But that guy told me, he said, Dan, the problem is if people have trouble, they want to talk to someone, go and see him. Don't hide from them, go and get say, yes, yes. And I learned a real good lesson from him because everything worked out. But he had to come down to smooth the water for us. American Blower also had fluid drives, hydraulic couplings is what they are. They used to use them on Chrysler cars, but they were used to vary fan speeds and pump speeds and all, and we were using them on, American Blower was pretty big in selling Georgia Power or Tampa Electric big fans for their power plants, their forced induced drift fans for power plants. So I did quite a bit of work with Florida Power and Light down there on fluid drives, which was an interesting experience. Well, I ran into Julian Johnson, who got to be a friend, and he had an engineering firm down there, and he said, Dan, don't you come and go with me? So I said, okay, I'll do that. So we did, and we had...
Well, that made you a consultant?
Well, that's right, I got to be a consultant. They were Johnson and Associates, and I took my PE exam and passed that, and got to be a PE. And we formed another company, Johnson, Evans, Hammond, and McNeil, with Bill Evans and Tom Hammond out of Jacksonville. And we did some work for American Oil, I believe it was, in stations where they pumped gas in the tankers and all. They had a big tank, and Bill Evans was pretty knowledgeable in that thing. So we did that, and it was real fun engineering. The problem was, and I guess you all have that too, that was in, the late 60s. I'll have to look when, And money wasn't that plentiful. Neither Julian and I had any money at all. And we did one job. It was, in those days, like a 6 or 7 story office building, which was a pretty big building for us. And the owners were out of St. Louis. There was some kind of a conglomerate, I guess, out of there. And we worked on that, 3 or 4, 5 months. Never got a dime out of it. They just didn't pay us at all. And then Julian started having female problems. He had a girlfriend on his side, and his wife found out about that. So got to be kind of dangerous. And he kind of went bad. He left me there and long, and I finally found out that he hadn't been paying his withholding taxes. We were just in desperate shape. So I finally said, I can't do this. I've got to do something else. And at that time, Nesbitt, the John J. Nesbitt Company, had decided to go to their own sales force and eliminate American Blower out of it. So they approached me and said, would you want to come back and operate out of Atlanta and be a regional manager for us? So
that's what you did.
That's right. I came back to Atlanta, and I really set up the southeast, 7 southeastern states with manufacturers, reps, and it was interesting work again. It was good. I got to know lots of people in the southeast, and did pretty well. And then I guess Nesbitt decided they were going to regional managers, just kind of in between. They don't really need them because we had management.
Middle management.
Middle management. They said they're going to do away with those. But we want y'all to come to Philadelphia. And I said, no way, I'm
That was smart.
And I was elected president of the Atlanta chapter there. And but I'm not going to Philadelphia.
And what year was that? Well, that's important.
That's right, yes. 67,
Okay.
yeah. And, no, that was before that because, I'll think of it in a minute.
That's all right.
But it must have been 3 years before. It must have been 64, 65. We can look up, because, the boy with, I'm trying to think of. Was vice president, he had to take over. In fact, someone came down from, Nesbitt and talked me into going up there where it was.
So you ended up going to Philadelphia?
Yes, I would, they were, they made it real attractive, and,
It's hard to make Philadelphia attractive.
yes. I'm trying to think, Maureen finished the last 3 years of high school up there, so it must, she finished in 67, so it must have been 63 or 64. And the other thing, that was when the Beatles came over.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to be in Atlantic City. That was one of the talking points would get Dolly and I gave the girls and all. And we took them over to Atlantic City to the auditorium there to see the Beatles. And I think Maureen was in like 9th grade, so she was what, 14, 15.
Yeah.
Kathleen was 3 years younger. And we took them over there, and we took Danny, we just waited outside on the boardwalk for them. And there were, thousands of girls and kids screaming, yes. But it was interesting. I had never worked like that. I'd always worked outside selling, really. And it was being in a factory like that day in and day out. And Nesbitt was owned by ITT at that time. ITT bought them. And Janine, if you know his name, he was the first big conglomerate. He bought up all these companies and everything. And ruined them all, too. And I guess I was marketing manager for the schoolhouse product or something like that. And we had meetings that night and everything was going on. I said, listen, if y'all just give me 2 engineers and a couple of people, let me handle this and not have to go through all this rigmarole with this. Well, they didn't want to do that. So, and I was, a company out of Miami named Panelfab, Panelfab, was relocatable classrooms. You know what the trailers. And we sold unit ventilators to them. Mm-hmm. And I got to know them pretty well, so because when they would come to Philadelphia, I was the one to pick them up at the airport and all, and entertain them and all. So they offered me a job. They said, Dan, come on and we want you to be director of marketing. We want to really start being a big contractor with all these and do real good. And they said, it sure sounds good to me. So we did. We moved to Miami. And it didn't last but about 6 or 7 or 8 months. They were undercapitalized. The people behind it were Cubans, which I didn't know, and it wasn't going to work out. They had a good panel to make a building out of, but all the electrical and the air conditioning and the heating and all, they really didn't know what they were doing, and I didn't know either. So it didn't work out at all. So. That's when Maureen was a senior in high school, and we moved back to Atlanta, and I didn't have a job or anything. I said, both of our parents were here, and we said, I can make a living doing something in Atlanta. So we moved back to Atlanta in '67. And again, Bill McKinney was real good to me in the sense that he had a friend, Marion Mundy, that had been with a fire brick company. Mm-hmm. And at that time, there was a smoke abatement man in Atlanta that had anything to do with incineration and all. At that time, most of the stores like A&P and Publix and Kroger's and all were using incinerators to burn up all that trash, because if they had open doors in the back, cartons of cigarettes would just walk out there. I mean, they were looting so much with stealing, so they have a opening in the back where you threw all your garbage in to incinerate. So I designed incinerators for about a year with doing that, and
Now, was that a creative BTU level also?
that's right. And I learned then, I guess, I can do almost anything, except I'm not a contractor. We had, I think it was Mary's brother or cousin, used to come to my house every Friday afternoon, and I had to write like 10 or 12 checks, so they could only cash at the liquor store was $20 or $50, so I had to give them 5 or 6 checks
Oh,
to make
my
it so they could buy the
goodness.
liquor. It was just, again, it was a disaster. It was fun, but it was a doing. And Dave Rickleton, do y'all remember Dave? Well, he was with you inside Stacy, and said, well, came to town, and I had known him when I was in Florida too. He said, well, Dan, we want some representation in Atlanta. Why don't you be our rep here? And I said, okay. I mean, I was getting kind of tired of it, paying those $20, $50 bills all the time. So I said, okay, that sounds like a good deal. So I did that, and they bought Agitair, which is the register line at that time. So for about a year,
Sounds like
I
washing
did around with you inside Stacy and Agitair. And then Pete Rose was a good friend of mine, fraternity brother from Tech, and he was single, and he represented Baltimore Air Corps, and they were basically, in those days, evap condensers. They were in old storage type of stuff. And Pete handled, I think, 3 or 4 states, the Carolinas, I think, and Georgia, and maybe Alabama. And he was single, and he had a plane, so he liked to fly around. And that's when BAC said, well, we want to concentrate, in Georgia and Atlanta, and make a going of this thing, not just to be in the refrigeration business. So, trying to think of who it was that I knew with BAC. But anyway, that BAC approached me and said, well, we'd like for you to be rep. So I had to go up to Baltimore. And that was when the president of BAC, I'm trying to think of his name now, he interviewed everybody before he made them.
Himself.
Yeah, himself. Yeah, he's the man that started BAC. So did anyway, I took BAC, and
And you had Baltimore Air Corps right up until you...
yes, and that must have been in
business.
'68. So it was.
Wow.
It was 30 years, 98, 30 years I had BAC, and they were a good company. No, they were really nice. And I guess y'all know, and then I have been in, I've often thought.
Now, when did you go into business for yourself? After you worked as the Baltimore Air Corps rep?
No, I
Or
started.
that's when you started?
Yeah, when I came back
Okay.
in '67, '68, I started the Dan McNeil company, and we were doing incinerator work then, and so I formed the
Oh,
company then.
okay. So you still had that company, and then you started repping
Yeah,
Baltimore Air Corps?
yeah.
Okay.
But the company, was started before I had VAC. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what other lines did you carry?
Well, BAC was always a major line, and they had View Inside, Stacy, and Agitair, and can't remember that.
Well, I know I always called you for Baltimore Air Corps.
Yeah, right, yeah. We did Indico. We started getting into things that were accessories for cooling towers. Heating Indico. I did a whole lot of work with Indico.
Chemical injection stuff? Or?
Yeah, and we did sand filters too. That started
Yeah,
having it.
correct.
And then in the end, we started doing some remodeling, rebuilding towers and all. That's really what they ought to be doing too. But I've said about ASHRAE, I started out in Texas and was real active in there. I was on the board out there. I guess we're going in the chairs. And then when I went to Tampa, I got real active there. And in Atlanta at one time, and got elected president. Left.
Yes.
And, Lloyd Barnum,
Barnard, yeah.
Lloyd
Mhm.
Barnard was
Lloyd
the
Barnard.
one. Was the one who replaced him. And, I've often thought, though, that people that don't participate in the organization that really
Support
does,
your field.
yeah, that does the basic work for your group is wrong. I mean, if you don't have some work to do like that you don't contribute something, I never have understood why people don't like that. I've always, I mean, anytime you work in a business, you get to know people, and the more you know, the better off you are, regardless of what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a people business in anything, and I've often wondered.
Share experiences and
Yeah,
they
right.
get to be good friends.
Right, yeah. That's where you spend most of your time doing that anyway, so. So I've enjoyed my work with the ASHRAE, and it's always been real beneficial to me. I think it's real nice.
You've been pretty active, too. You've got,
Yeah.
let's see, ANA, and you're still on that, right?
Yes, yes.
Admissions and Advancement. And then you said you're now a consultant to the Terminology TC.
Yeah.
What does a consultant to a TC
No,
do?
no, no.
And
You know,
then-
the ANA is an interesting thing. You'll tell you a little history, fun
Yeah,
things
yeah.
about that. Well, you know, they decided to move to Atlanta. They made
Right,
the
from
decision
New York,
to-
right?
From New York coming here. So they had a group of older people on the ANA committee, and they approached, I think it was Barney Burr, approached me and Warren Shiver and one or two other things. The guy that was with IBM,
Coughlin.
Bob
Bob
Coughlin.
Coughlin.
So we flew for a year, every month, we flew to New York and worked on the ANA and got educated in how to do that. So we flew up that 12 times to go to the engineering building there where ASHRAE was located. That we were the new ANA committee. And we came to Atlanta.
It took you 12 times to figure out how to do it?
And we came back, and I guess I was appointed chairman when we moved to Atlanta. So I was the first chairperson in Atlanta. And we were really low. And I do remember we used to have a whole lot more applications, and the people that were judging were a little more critical than we are now. People have gotten to really look at who they were and what jobs they had and things. And we didn't get everything done, and you have to review them. You know, the second time I went back when I was young for 3 days. I did it and went back and reviewed everyone that we had done. And it was like
My
400 or
goodness.
500 of them that I had to do myself to do that. So the
Unbelievable.
ANA has changed a whole lot. I'm sorry. Anything else?
Let's see. You're a life member.
Yes.
You've got this Distinguished Service Award, 50-year member, Distinguished 50-year member award, and a Regional Award of Merit so far.
Yeah. Well, I was interested too that the Warren Shiver was, younger than I, but he was an engineer with nuclear board, one of their partners in the nuclear board, so he had good status and everything. So he and I were on a whole lot of things together, it seemed like. So I guess he was the host on the 1979, well, that's a CRC.
It was a winter meeting you're talking about?
Yeah, winter meeting now. Yeah, I was general chairman on 84, but the one before that was in 80, I guess, huh? 78. I was vice chairman the last year.
They didn't always hold to the 4-year rule.
No, it didn't. Yeah, it didn't allow that, that's right. I think Warren was chairman, I was vice chairman, then I was the general chairman in 84, and then they made me honorary chairman in 90, so I had 4 years, or 3 years of chairmanship for the winter meeting and all. It was,
It's fun though.
it was.
It is fun.
Well, and then Dot and I used to go to all the meetings. I mean, both the annual meeting and the winter meeting. I mean, we would go to all of them. It was just nice. We got to know most of the people. And in fact, that's what we did all of our vacationing, I guess.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah. But you know, another comment, when we came to Atlanta, when I had been in Texas, I guess when I was regional manager, I went for 4 or 5 years never having a vacation. We never took a vacation. They would go with me sometime when I was traveling around, but never
Yeah.
take the time off. You know how that is.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. But I think ASHRAE is one of the best organizations I've been in. I tell the story, I've been in have been active as a volunteer in 2 organizations that I think a whole lot of, and one of them is the Boy Scouts. I was real active with Boy Scouts. I was district chairman and assistant scoutmaster and all. And you know, I'm a wood badge, a 3B wood badge man, meaning you've gone to a whole lot of training programs and all. And I thought Boy Scouts did a beautiful job, and I think ASHRAE had. But I've often said I think I'd never like to be a staff member for either one of them. Had to deal with all these volunteers. But they are 2 of the best organizations I've known.
Well, I certainly appreciate all the time that you put into ASHRAE.
Yeah.
It's certainly given me a good start in doing what I'm doing now. I do
Well, you do a
appreciate
good
it.
job too.
And I miss having you around.
Well, Pam, I'll have to tell a story on you, because I'm using
Uh-oh.
you an example now that we're talking about that what the females are doing in this world now, and they're doing a whole
Taking
lot.
over.
Yeah, and why? Because we and I talk about y'all doing a better job than the males are.
Well,
You really
thank
are. You really are. You have more interest, and you just have you do a better job. You really do.
Well, we have a mission statement, I guess, to do better
Yeah.
than, we gotta work
Well,
twice as hard to do.
That's what you told me
That's
that
right.
you do, and I think that's right. I'm convinced of that. I think if I was starting a company now, I want a female partner. That's what you want. That's what you need to do, man. Get that, and you ought to get it.
Be careful.
Be careful. Be careful. Right now.
I had an ex-partner who told me that being in business with me was like marriage without sex.
I know who that was.
Yeah,
too.
you do.
I know who that was. That's right.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you doing this for me.
Well, I've enjoyed it. I know you'll do a good job too.
I'm trying. I don't know if I'll do it, but I'm trying.
If you watch some of those other tapes, Bill McKinney was terrible to get him to say anything. George Hightower, you need to just get him started, and he will.
And he goes.
He will go.
That's right.
But some of them are kind
That's all right, we can leave it. It's not hurting anything.
of, no. But,
I want to thank Ben Leopard for being our cameraman.
Yes. Ben did a beautiful picky about what the building was going to look like and things like that. So they had to bring a picture of a catalog of a cooling tower, what it looked like, and they had, I guess there were 20 people on that meeting. 2 or 3, 6 architects, a couple of engineers, me, and we sat there and they finally said, where's the tower going to be? What's it going to look like? And they had a big deal of where it was going to sit on that building in relationship to everything else. Went back to the job about 6 months later, and it was just opposite of where it was supposed to be. And I said, why is that? He said, nobody told me any difference. Nobody told me any difference. And I've often thought that thing gets so messed up. And sometimes, if anybody followed all the directions, the building would not get built. If a building gets built, it's a happenstance. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything's just, and that was just one little thing.